Hey there, welcome to Improv FAQ. I'm James Quesada, and in this video, we're going to talk about yes and, which is likely to be one of the first concepts that any improviser learns in classes. We'll talk about what yes and means, the ways it might help you as an improviser, and also when it might get in your way. So, what does yes and mean? Yes means accepting the ideas of the people that you're playing with and building on those ideas. Accept and build. Agree and add. And in turn, people will do the same for you. In the world of improv, we are playing make-believe, using our imaginations and pretending that all sorts of things are true that aren't actually true. We're making things up as we go along. And in every moment, there's a million, billion, trillion possibilities of what could happen next. And the only way to really move forward is for someone to make a choice. And if you have two people on stage and one person makes a choice to say, "I am the king and this is my kingdom," the other person could make things difficult and say, "Nah, that's not my favorite idea. Let's keep making our way through that list of a million, billion, trillion possibilities until we find something I like." Or they could make things so much easier by just saying, "Yes, you are the king and I am your squire." Yes and means play along. And that's the overview, but let's unpack it a little bit more with these 5 things that you should know about yes and. 1. The most important thing to remember is that yes and is a teaching tool, and it's a powerful teaching tool because it's simple. Yes and. But it doesn't cover everything there is to know about improv. It's just a way to take all the nuances and layers of improvising and boil it down to a 2-word mantra. It also attacks one of the biggest hang-ups that adults have when they go to learn improv, which is that we've been wired to say no, to criticize and judge ideas as good or bad, and to protect our egos from participating in things that might make us look stupid. In the real world, we learn to proceed with caution whenever we're unsure about a situation. Yes and helps us to recondition ourselves to say yes, to assume that every idea is brilliant, we're doing exactly what we should be doing, we're in this together, and everything is going to work out great. 2. There's a difference between a literal yes and the spirit of yes and. Early on in classes, if you learn the concept of yes and, you might also do an exercise where you need to actually, literally, use the words yes and. And it can be super helpful to practice doing that, but it won't always feel so useful. We don't want all of our dialogue to sound like, "Yes, you are the king, and I am your squire." It feels clunky and unnatural. And surely our characters can't agree with each other all the time, can they? Well, first of all, as I've said on this channel before, it's totally fine if characters disagree and say no to each other. It's not okay when the improvisers disagree or we're judging each other's ideas. You can just feel when the improvisers are like, "I totally hear what you're saying, but I think that we should do this other thing instead." So, if you're a student of improv and you're working on yes and, ask yourself, am I just yes-anding on the surface? Or am I really making an effort to jump into the fray, into other people's worlds, even when I don't know what's going to happen or how we're going to make it work? If you're playing with the spirit of yes and, you're honestly trying to connect with your scene partners and play together in the same world that you're building together. When you do that, your character can say yes or no, agree or disagree. They can be best friends or bitter rivals. The text doesn't matter as much as the connection between players. Third, yes and goes beyond words. It also applies to physicality, emotion, and other nonverbals. If someone makes a physical choice to be in the driver's seat of a car, you can yes and them by joining in the passenger seat, which is different than joining in the back seat to make it feel like a taxi or an Uber, or standing next to them and asking them to roll down the window. Those are all fine ways to physically yes and. Same thing with body language and emotion. Let's go back to our first example where we have the scene that starts with, "I am the king and this is my kingdom." At face value, we can accept the truth of what was said. This is the king and it's his kingdom. But why would he say it that way? What can we pick up from the facial expression and the gesturing? Maybe he's upset and putting his foot down about an argument or a rule that you broke. I am the king and this is my kingdom might lead to, forgive me, my lord, I will never throw a party in the throne room again. This accepts the reality from your scene partner and builds on it, and not just what they said, but how they said it. 4. Yes and also applies to you. A lot of the time in improv, we're talking about ways to support other people. Support each other, yes, but also keep affirming and building on your own choices. If you made a choice to be nervous, keep finding ways to express that. Wring your hands and dab your forehead with a handkerchief. Jumpstart when somebody makes a sudden move. I could probably do a whole video on yes-anding yourself, but for now, just remember that you can do that. 5. Yes and is most useful in the beginning of a scene, which is not to say that halfway through a scene it's time to start ignoring each other and breaking reality. It just means that yes and is about getting on the same page about what's going on in a scene. And once you're on the same page, it can be helpful to kind of shift gears to another great phrase, which is if then. If this is true, then what else is true? It might only seem slightly different from yes and, but sometimes when we stick to yes and, we can find ourselves just adding things to a scene that don't have much to do with each other, and we start to wonder, where is this going? What are we going to do with all this yes and? Switching to if then makes things more related to each other. Yes, there's a king, and there's a squire, and the king is mad, and the squire threw a party in the throne room. If there was a party in the throne room, then maybe they got into the royal wine. If they got into the royal wine, then the squire is probably pretty hungover. And if they find a pair of underwear on the throne, then people were probably hooking up at the party. And if it was the queen's underwear, then the squire had better start explaining while he still has a head. The framing is a little different, but the underlying principle is the same. It's paying attention, accepting, and building, and connecting, and listening to words and actions, and emotions, in spirit, and sometimes literally. And you know what? The more you unpack it, the more you'll just want to sum it all up by saying yes and. That's it for this episode. Make sure you like and follow and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if there are other questions that you want to have answered on Improv FAQ.